I don't mean to make it sound like I'm indulging in the secrets of an occult temple, but there doesn't seem to be much interest in my work. And I feel that although quite a number of loose ends could be put together by someone who was interested in my work, I'm still in the process of assembling things for presentation. I have everything in my search books, and I've put enough online that you can use my blogs as a search book room. However, this hasn't come out really, and I think the details need to be understood. We know that Martin Luther King's tragic end was not just an act of racism. In fact, the earlier attempt on his life by Azula Curry was from a black woman who drove a letter opener into his chest, seemingly suggestive of the Burston letters. The occult violence of people who are acrimonious about anything other than absolute monogamy is the text issue. Although clearly the men responsible were laughing at the idea they are rapists and child molesters by conviction, that somehow they portrayed themselves as Dudley Do-Rights. Anyway, you may know by now from looking at my work that the Jet magazine from 1964, January 1964, with Kennedy on the cover, eulogizing him, is very small. You have to have a magnifying glass to detect the peeping Tom and the two women who emerge from a single Coretta-like look and an onlooker, virtually signifying a symbiosis in extramarital monitoring between Coretta and J. Edgar Hoover. Coretta responded as any wife would respond, I suppose, in the 50s. So she responded the way Jimmy Carrey would respond to. She cried. So there's a slash through King. It's not all the way through. There's also a slash through all the way through Kennedy on the January 1964 Humanist magazine, which was their first issue. Had people in it like Otto Crash, if you can believe it, Robert Anton Wilson. So maybe there is sort of an intent on the part of this semiotic magazine, semiotic um, satellite group from the Axis Cinema. There's about whom there's two essential virgins. Could have saved John Lennon, Lennon's Houdini. However you want to look at that. I think the evidence is clear that the Beatles had hand in this, particularly Ringo Starr, Richard Starkey, because of the way the rings signify marriage and so on. They had a reptilian lampoon approach to make it seem like all the bases were covered in free speech, but they evaded the International Court of Justice. Anyway, I noted a long time ago that Deterring Democracy by Chomsky and Dream Deferred by Abby Phillips had DD in the captioning. And DD had played a lewd, criminal, symbolic role as the triumph of the underworld of Nazi Germany in the Texas school book. And Midori Goto was the topic of the script. I mean, you get that from how viciously she attacked me. Ichiro's sports medicine scene has now got me dying from Parkinson's and glaucoma, in addition to being deaf. Seattle is really a wonderland when it comes to this pretzel of con artists at the hookah. But Gail Burson playing violin in Seattle Center's mural is another example with the geisha between her legs. Of how, I mean, Goto with the slasher and a Blake stroke to Goto. Midori means green. It appears in the Burson script. So go dash toe, Goto, referring in the opening pages of Abby Phillips' book, clearly shows that they knew. She was a friend of Kamala Harris. And the Zucker people were all over it, protecting Gail Burstyn, working with Kate Bush and David Geffen, Leslie Katz, John Schulman, Abdul Eisenstadt. Abdul is his nickname. It's as creepy as can be. It looks like Nordenberg skunked Pawsar Pit. But they also mention that Jackson's first defiant trespass or whatever charge he got at the library, segregated library, was maitre d'd by a lawyer named Donald J. Sampson, which is clearly a cryptonym of an index system. He was being shadowed. Donald J. Toon, everybody knows who that is, and the Sampson option. So the thing about BB at the Magic Mountain at the Dome here in Tacoma, it's an end game on Martin Luther King Boulevard with the sadistic architectural arrangements that Hillary Clinton's slumlords set up as a cackle up the sleeve of the Clinton-Trump regime. It signifies the confederacy of the NAACP and all this weird, creepy endgame script. So just so you know, I'm just saying.